Hello. I thought I'd do a short video with some tips and tricks now that you're really digging into the SAT and getting to grips a little bit more with the tastings. They're super useful. They're a really fun part of the course, but they can also trip people up because there's quite a lot to process. You might have done tastings before in a different way, and this is very structured and very kind of neat and tidy. So sometimes that throws people out because it's different to what they might have done before. So I thought I'd do a little bit of a video with some of my kind of tips and tricks for how you can go about making the most out of your tastings. So first off, sounds very stupid, but have a clean glass. You can't see that because have a clean glass. If you don't have a clean glass, it's just going to smell like whatever it's dirty with. It could be dust, it could be something you've had in it previously, whatever that might be. I've got this nice tulip shaped one because I think it's good for getting aromas. I'm going to use this bottle of Arden American sherry cask. This is at 50% ABV, but it's 2 p.m. in the afternoon, so I don't feel too bad about that. I'm going to pour about 15 mil. You'll get the hang of doing 15 mil. Any more, it's just a waste. Any less, and you're not going to get the kind of full aromas out of it. When it comes to working your way down the SAT, the first thing is color. So this can be tricky. The tip that I use, well, first off, if you this background, hold it up against a white sheet of paper. That's going to really help you identify the colors in it. The thing to look out for when you're going between clear, lemon, gold, amber, and brown is the difference between lemon, gold, and amber. Clear, that's fine. Brown, there are very few spirits that get as far as brown. So generally speaking, particularly on the samples you're going to be assessing in this course, we're looking at lemon, gold, and amber. The difference between lemon, gold, and amber is the presence of orange. If there is orange in the spirit, it's amber. If it just looks yellow, then it's either lemon or gold, and then it's up to you to make that assessment between lemon or gold. This has definitely got amber in it. So it's definitely got orange in it. So it is an amber spirit. So I'd classify that as amber. If it didn't have that, I think I've got an example. If it didn't have that, maybe that. You can see the difference between those two things. Hold on, I've got my t-shirt. This has got orange in it. This definitely doesn't. That is gold. This is amber. That's the good way of doing it. Just choose one that you think is right and commit to it. Don't say this is a little bit ambery gold or this is lemony gold or anything like that. Just pick one and move on. Anywhere in the SAT where there's a dash, you just need to choose one of them. So try not to sit on the fence. I know it can be quite uncomfortable, but try not to sit on the fence, just plump for one. You don't get marked down for it. So it's a really good habit. If you're wildly incorrect, then I will kind of gently nudge you in the right direction, but don't worry too much about that. So you've done your color. Now you're looking at intensity. A good technique for intensity is to hold your glass sort of down here, maybe even lower. You can't see it, but about down by your sort of midriff belly button. If you can smell something, and by smell something, I don't just mean detect alcohol, but if you can pick up actual aromas and you might say, I smell a bit of caramel, I can smell a bit of butterscotch, whatever it might be, that's a pronounced spirit. If you have to bring it up to your chin before you can find anything, it's getting more into medium. If you have to get your nose right into the glass, it's a bit more light. And if your nose can be in the glass and you still can't smell anything, you're looking at neutral. So use that as a sort of sliding scale between neutral, light, and pronounced, and then work your way up and down that to try and assess where you think that spirit is. As you get through the course, you will come to realize that a lot of spirits can only be certain things. Vodka, for example, will always be light, will always be neutral. At a push, light, but 99 times out of 100, vodka is going to be neutral. The other end of the spectrum, whiskey is always going to be medium to pronounced. So if you've got a whiskey, you know it's going to be medium to pronounced. So you don't need to do that. And it just narrows down the options that you need to choose from when you're making that assessment of aroma intensity. The first time you smell a spirit, stick your nose in a glass. It's gonna be quite intense. Might make you do this. Might make your eyes water. Might make you pull back a little bit, and that's just your nose and your olfactory senses getting used to the ethanol, the alcohol. So a really good technique. First off, put your tongue into the roof of your mouth and open your mouth. It's like opening the windows and the doors. It kind of creates a nice little through draft and helps you begin to pick up flavors. So you're not going, but you can kind of let it travel through. So the first time you put your nose in and take a sniff, don't just have a sniff. The first time, it's going to be quite heavy on the alcohol. It's going to feel quite intense. That's just your nose getting used to it. Go back a second time. By the second time, you should start to be a little bit more comfortable. Your nose is less overwhelmed by the alcohol, and you can begin to pick up flavors and aromas. By the time you go back a third time, there's much more there, and you can begin to really kind of identify the aroma characteristics that you're looking for. You might be able to pick up some raw materials, some oak and maturation notes, all this sorts of thing, and begin to, take a record of what it is you're picking up. After that third time, you can go back and forth as many times as you like, and your nose is going to be pretty comfortable with it. So it's a really good way to set yourself up for success. Is don't think that the first time you get in there, you're going to be able to pick up all these amazing nuances of flavor, because it's going to take a little bit of time. When it comes to tasting, take a little sip in your mouth and chew it. I know it sounds quite strange, it's liquid, but if you chew it, swill it around your mouth, really coat your mouth. It gives your tongue, it gives your taste buds, it gives your nose enough of a chance to make assessments on flavor, to make assessments on texture, to make assessments on balance. But chewing it really coats the mouth and really gives you that kind of insight into what the spirit is like. It allows for, things like, if it's had oak maturation, it might have some tannic grip on it. That again will come through in that tasting moment. So let's give it a go. It just makes a world of difference taking the time to really chew something and hold on to it. Some spirits, that's going to be easier than others. Like, a lot of people have had a bad experience with tequila and asking them to chew tequila. That's a big ask. But the more of these you do, the more comfortable you get. You'll get your own kind of specific style and system. But it's a really good habit to get into. And as you go through and you do more tastings, you'll become much more confident with what it is you're looking out for when you do that. But looking for texture, a really good way of doing things. When you come to assessing the spirit and talking about it, one thing that will quite often trip people up is the addition of sugar. So in the SAT, when we talk about sweetness, what we mean by that is the addition of sugar post distillation. When a spirit comes off a still, it is always dry. It is always colorless and it's always dry. It doesn't matter in the instance of rum that's been made with sugarcane, it still comes off dry. If you then add a bit of sugar, off dry, more sugar, you're getting into medium and sweet. Sweet is reserved for liqueurs, so it means a very high dose of sugar addition. The tipping point into that is if sugar is a tasting note. If it is like, this is actively sweet, that's at the sweet end of things, but it's, broadly speaking, it's almost always liqueurs. Quite often people trip up because they detect caramel or they detect vanilla. And these are aromas and flavor characteristics that we associate with sweetness. And so our brain goes, oh, caramel, this is a sweet spirit. But it doesn't work like that in the SAT. So if you find yourself wanting to say a spirit is sweet, just pause, think, has this had sugar added to it? A lot of spirits, for example, whiskey, you're not allowed to add sugar. So it will only ever be dry. But if you're detecting sweet flavors, a really good exercise to think, okay, what sweet flavors am I detecting? Is it caramel? Is it butterscotch? Is it treacle? And then you can kind of be a little bit more specific with it. But sugar's a really, the addition of sugar is a really tricky one. To try and assess it, one thing is to put a bit of spirit in your hand and rub it. If it gets tacky and sticky, that means there's been sugar added to it. The other one is you're looking for kind of like a silkiness on the texture. If it feels silky, that is the addition of sugar. It's very hard, so please don't be disheartened if you struggle to pick it up. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of practice to be able to pick up that kind of nuance of sugar addition, particularly in things where teeny tiny amount has been added. Which leads me into the other thing. I always say avoid the word smooth. Just don't use it. Just take it out of your lexicon and put it away somewhere, and you can pick it back up once the course is finished. The issue with the word smooth is it can mean different things. It can refer to texture. So is it spiky? Is it harsh? Is it smooth? It can refer to the addition of sugar and that silkiness. Sometimes people call that smoothness in the spirit. So that's something completely different. It can relate to alcohol intensity. If spirit is 60, 65, even 70%, people, that's not smooth compared to a 40%. But that's something completely different to the addition of sugar. And then the other thing is just balance. If it's all alcohol and no flavor, sometimes people will say that's harsh, that's not, that's out of balance. But the flip side of that is if there's lots of flavor and not very much alcohol, they'll say that it's smooth. But what they mean there is the balance. And actually, you need to get a balance between all these things. And so using the word smooth can just be a little bit confusing. So I say there is better ways to describe anything else. So just take smooth, get rid of it. We'll come back to it another time. Assessments of complexity. This is really hard. It takes time. Again, as with color and as with intensity, choose one, stick to it, be prepared to justify it, not because anyone's going to challenge you, but just have in your mind, like, why have I made this particular assessment? I like to think about it like a song. So some songs, they just stop dead like that. And we'd call that a simple finish, simple complexity. Some songs might have a guitar, a bass, a drum, and a singer. And the bassist and the drummer might stop, and the guitarist and the singer keep going, and then the singer stops and the guitarist keeps going, and then the song ends. So we'd say that's got some complexity because it's different things are happening. It's been considered, but it carries on. If everything keeps playing and then fading out over time, or maybe the guitar stops and then it comes back in, or the singer stops and comes back in, we say this is very complex. If there's a lot going on, if flavors are coming in and out, playing around, and there's some movement, that's what we talk about when we talk about very complex spirits. So it's quite a shortcut way of trying to work out whether a spirit is a simple spirit where pretty much nothing happens, stops dead, all the way through to very complex. Again, these things take time. Please don't be disheartened if you struggle at the beginning, but it's a really good habit to try and work through that assessment as you go. More broadly speaking, when we're making this assessment, there are a few things to look out for. Firstly, this is always impartial. Some people love whiskey, some people hate whiskey. That's neither here nor there. We're trying to make an independent assessment on the quality of a spirit. Whether you like it or not, I'm afraid in this context, it doesn't matter. What we're looking for is your assessment, your assessment of that spirit. So we always do things impartially. It's never about personal preference. It's never about subjectivity. The other thing is it's always done in isolation. Very often through the course, you might be comparing, for example, a peated and unpeated spirit, or a añejo tequila with a blanco tequila, for example. You're often doing comparisons. And that's a good way of showing the impact of something like oak maturation or post-distillation operations. They're really good for illustrating. But when we come to do an assessment, we always do them in isolation. So you never say, this spirit is sweeter than the other one, or it's darker gold than the other one. It's always done in isolation. This spirit is medium, off dry. This spirit is gold, amber. It's never in comparison to another spirit. So always make sure you work in isolation. The word expressiveness comes through. This is a tricky one because it's different to complexity. Expressiveness refers to, does the spirit talk about the way that it was made and its raw materials? If you pick up a tequila and it smells really distinctly of agave, that's expressive of its raw material. If you pick up a cognac and it smells really of grapes, sultanas, Parma violets, the things that we expect to find from the raw material, we call that an expressive spirit. If you pick up a whiskey and it just smells of the port barrique that it spent time in, it's not necessarily as expressive as if it smelled a bit of the port barrique, a bit of the ex-bourbon cask it was in beforehand, and a bit of the cereal and the fermentation process that it went through. So we're always looking for, does this spirit tell us a story about the way that it was produced? And that's what we mean when we talk about expressiveness. And then finally, when you come to your conclusion, people hate this because you have to start at outstanding. So you start at outstanding and then you work your way down. So you say, okay, this is an outstanding spirit, but maybe the alcohol was not quite well integrated and it wasn't quite balanced. I'm going to mark it down to very good. And that's fine. That doesn't mean it's a bad spirit any more than coming down again to good means it's a bad spirit. It just means that you have an impartial reason to bring that down from outstanding. Where people struggle is that outstanding is, great, a good and expressive example of a spirit, right the way through to this is the best thing I've ever tasted in my entire life. And those are both outstanding, right? But very good is a bit more specific. It's not as good as outstanding, whereas outstanding is, the top all the way upwards. So it can be tricky. This is where it's really useful to write down your notes as you go along, because when you get to your assessment, start from outstanding and work back through your notes. If you've made any negatives, that gives you a reason to pull that spirit down the assessment categories. So if you write all your notes and you say that alcohol's not very balanced, the aroma is a bit of wet cardboard, the body is really light and a bit insipid, and blah blah blah, but this is a very good spirit, those two things don't marry up. And if you're struggling and you're thinking, is this what's my assessment on this spirit? Look back, and if you've got no negative comments, there's nothing there. It's the alcohol's well balanced, the aromas are really good, it's very expressive of its raw material. That's an outstanding spirit. Don't be afraid to say that. It doesn't mean that it's incredible, it should be worth millions of pounds. It just means it ticks all the boxes that you're looking for as you're working your way down the SAT. So don't be afraid of it. Just choose one, base it on the notes that you've made beforehand. It should always flow through, and then just stick to it. Don't say, this is sort of on the border of very good and outstanding. Just kind of pick one. And as long as it's justified by the notes you've made beforehand, you're going to be in a really good spot. That kind of wraps up some tips and tricks. I hope that's useful. Any questions on any of it, please just drop me a note and we can talk about it. But as I said, this is a really fun and like engaging part of the course. It takes the theory and puts it into practice and allows you to kind of take everything you've learned and look for it in the glass, look for it in the spirits that you're tasting. And it's the beginning of a journey, right? These might be the first few tastings you've ever done. You could be a seasoned pro, but they're not, I would bet a lot of money, they're not going to be the last tastings you ever do. And so please always take them as an opportunity to learn, opportunity to progress, an opportunity to discuss with your colleagues, with your peers, with your whoever, with me, someone who can offer you a different opinion, a different way of looking at things, and to help you really kind of kick on so that you just get more and more confident, more and more comfortable. And you're like, yes, right, that is a gold spirit. That is pronounced intensity. That has aroma characteristics of blah, blah, blah. It's very good, outstanding. So you just get more and more comfortable, more and more confident. So good luck with all of it. As I said, give me a shout with any questions, and I look forward to reading all your tasting notes. Cheers.